Welcome to A Conversation with Tobias by Lenox and Parker. Hope you enjoyed this episode.
So bear with me, everybody.
That's all good. That's all good. I appreciate your time. O'Neill spoke highly of you.
Oh, you know O'Neill?
Oh yeah. That's how I'm connecting with you. I wanted to actually do a sit down with you, but yeah, I interviewed him a few weeks back, and I'm doing this podcast. So I'm doing like a two thing. I'm doing like a podcast, and then I'm doing the feature in the magazine. And everything's positive and good. So nothing to there's no hidden nothing. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be great.
Great.
Yeah, but I met O'Neill years ago at the Beverly Center, and we've been friends ever since. I had him on one of our covers. I think the first issue we did, we had him on the cover. It was way back when, but yeah, he's good people.
Oh,
so
wow. Yeah,
so tell me about Allen Hughes. Who is Allen Hughes?
Wow, shit. You're asking a twin that now has a solo career. That's the funny thing. You know?
Wow.
I don't know. I'm just a dude that likes observing things and being inspired by people, places, and things, and not one thing, and being also like challenged to get outside one's box by other people's experiences. So I'm always looking for that. I'm always looking for the challenge, or not just staying in one lane. I'm biracial, and I understand both sides of or all sides of the fence. Very empathic. So just looking for that genuine inspiration. Unlike a lot of artists and people go, "Oh, I need inspiration for my art. I need inspiration." Like, I just like inspiration for life. Yeah. It doesn't need to be for my art and for my art, because I think life is as important. Quality of life is as important as what you do. Right. I think some of us get a little too caught up in what we do and don't appreciate life and family,
Yeah, that's important what you just said. Appreciating life and family, especially as we get older, we want to take time to enjoy the summers we have. I always say, I have like 50 summers left. Let me take my time and enjoy those, 50 summers, and really not think about next year so much, but grasp each day that I have in front of me. Is what I try to do. I try to live.
How old are you?
I just turned 50 in December.
Oh, so I'm 51.
Okay, yeah.
At the turn of April. This is the age you start going, how many summers do I got left?
Yep, I got 50. I got 50 summers that I hope to see. Now, what I actually do have, that's a different story. So let me enjoy each day, and you plan, but you still try to enjoy the best you can each day. Is what I try.
By the way, I jumped over the fact that you look at least 10 years younger than 50. So.
Oh, really? Appreciate that. I try to exercise and eat healthy and, do all the stuff I'm supposed to do, that they tell you to do to have a longer life. I try to do that.
Victor, that's the other thing as Black men too. And anybody, person of color, is like, water, whole foods, exercise, sauna, cold plunge, nature. These are all the things that I pay attention to.
Trying to get O'Neill to go to hiking with me, but that's a different story altogether.
But O'Neill be hiking.
Yeah.
But he likes to do that fucking raggedy ass Runyon Canyon. I was like, O'Neill, come on over to where there's no people and it's just nature, real nature.
Yeah. I'm a nature person too. I like it. So what inspired you to be a filmmaker, and at the same time, what motivated you to keep going, I would say?
Yeah. I don't, me and my brother and my mother were from Detroit originally. So the whole notion of in the 70s too, you're like out West. I remember we got to get out West. And then the whole Hollywood movie business was, we thought we were going to be in front of the camera as twin little boys. We headed West because there was family out here, but also we thought we were going to be stars. We were going to be little Gary Colemans.
Oh, nice.
Remember, Different Strokes was a big 78, 79. We moved to California in 80. We got here with these resumes. I'll send you a scan of let me show you the poster now. Hold on.
Okay.
This is on my wall. The back of this is even more hilarious.
Oh, wow. Oh wow, Hughes.
We
Oh,
took this picture in Detroit in 1980, and look at what it says at the bottom. Does it say? It says
wow.
singing, dancing, models, all of which is a lie. So let me put this back. And we got out here and we started auditioning. And between our big nose and lack of talent in front of the camera, it became abundantly clear that that was not going to be the path. So we were in Pomona, California. And somehow, I don't know, like the with the video revolution at the time, the home video revolution, we asked, and there was crack that was hitting at the time too.
Right.
We asked our mom to rent us one of those cameras as my mom was going from welfare to millionaire because she's a self-made woman. So she quickly got off of welfare and started building a business and had the means to rent a camera for us when we were 12. And her two boys disappeared for 24 hours straight, just made movies. And I think
wow.
that was the, it's like you're whether you're a musician or novelist or filmmaker or ballet dancer, I think it chooses you.
Right.
There's not that moment where you're like, oh, I'm gonna do that. It wasn't that. That was later when we saw Robert Townsend with Hollywood Shuffle and Spike Lee, what She's Gotta Have It. You're like, oh, there's other guys that look like us doing this. This is what we should do.
So you were out early living life, actually living life and experiencing that. That's cool. I mean, that's different because most people, when they're young, they're in school and then they're in college and then they go into the world and get a job. But you had already did all that already as a young person coming up in California, correct?
Yeah, I mean, also coming up in a poor, lower middle class communities, sometimes poor communities,
right,
in Detroit, and then when we got to Pomona, Pomona was in 1980. It was like a third, a third, a third. It was a third black, a third white, a third Latin.
okay.
And so you had and then in 83, 84, like I said, the cracks start coming in and gangbanging start coming in. So you're living life and experiencing real life as it's really happening. And I remember getting the camera too. I mean, we made a documentary about a friend of ours who was a crack dealer. So I remember mom at the time. My mom, our friends all had the Adidas suits, and even if they weren't drug dealers, but their mothers would spoil them, and my mother would not spoil us with the gold and the chains and the Adidas jumpsuits, but she would spoil us with if I wanted to play electric guitar, she'd buy a guitar.
Right.
Albert wanted to paint, she'd buy So she invested in the things that mattered back then. But I remember when she finally bought us a camera, she bought us a camera because the allure of like drug dealing was starting to, you're now 12, 13.
Right.
And those friends that mothers were buying them those tracksuits are now buying them for themselves from being, whether they're runners, scouts, or selling drugs. And my mom was smart enough to go, let me feed this addiction they have with these electronics, so they stay out of that stuff. So it worked.
Do you think that what your mom did for you guys influenced the themes and the messages you pick for your movies and your film that you work on? Like
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
learned?
Because my mom, although she'll describe herself as a capitalist,
Right.
is also a very moral person and a very thoughtful person and a very like what's essential, what does one need. And her whole the where she built her empire was vocational job relocation. So if you injured
Oh,
yourself on one job, her company with your insurance would have to assess your skills and assign you to a new career.
oh
So my
wow.
mom was always good at. She naturally had the ability to look at her kids and see what the talent was and what we needed. But there was always a strong moral base, like morality in the household. We grew up really knowing without a church either, without a religion,
Right.
like what is right, what is wrong. You don't fuck over people, and you keep your word. Honesty, all this old school shit that it's just been lost now in our culture was in our home. Without religion being in the home, was I think my mother was a deeply spiritual person
Right. Right.
and a hustler too. So she had that capitalist thing going too, but also the spirit. So I like that combination.
The
That's
balance
that's
there.
why when you jump to actually Dear Mama, I think the thing I related to in that was like I said, damn, Tupac's struggle was he came up, with a moral salt of the earth grounding, like to be of the people and for the people. And then this hip hop thing happened to him. And hip hop at the time was all about like ultra capitalism and dog eat dog. And I think that I related to his struggle with that. I don't feel like I ever had the struggle he had, but because he's a rock star
Right.
who's comes from abject poverty and that Black Panther background, I think that conflict was stronger with him than most people.
Is there speaking of Tupac, is there anything that he said to you or spoke to you about that influenced you moving forward? Like just stayed with you? Like, man, he said this and it really stood with me. Like that you
You know what's funny is that when you think about when I knew Tupac, I was 19, 20. It's the same time I knew Eazy-E, who Eazy was a real mentor. And I hate that word mentor because it has other, I don't know.
yeah.
It doesn't describe the spiritual connection sometimes you have that is beyond that definition. But I answer the question like this: when it came to Tupac, who was a peer, and
Right.
Eazy, who was like an OG at the time, I don't remember anything they specifically said. I remember it was all like osmosis, like you're learning through
Right.
experience with them all the things. I could tell you what I learned, but there wasn't one thing that stood out in particular with Tupac that he said. It was what he did that was made more of an impression on me.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, Easy E. You just mentioned Easy E. I didn't know that you knew Easy E, but the
Oh
whole
yeah,
time period, I remember listening to NWA. I remember the battle between Dre and Easy and all that stuff, and it was so impactful. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast in Boston, so when I first heard NWA, I was like, "Whoa, who are these guys?" It was such an impactful movement. How did that affect your life? I mean, just being in the
that
piece of it.
that changed everything. When I was 16 and heard first before "Fuck the Police," it was "Dope Man,"
Mhm.
and I remember hearing "Dope Man" and going, "Who is this dude?" Like that, the character Easy just was like fascinating. And then Ice Cube came on that track, and you're like,
I
"Who's this
remember that,
dude that
yeah.
got out of prison?" Like he sounded like he just got out of prison. And then when you heard "Fuck the Police," you know what it did for. I remember we were always getting hassled by the cops, getting pulled over, black teenagers. I remember "Fuck the Police" and Straight Outta Compton and that whole Easy E movement with NWA. It empowered us.
Right.
We felt like superheroes after that. And it also glorified gang banging and drug dealing. And we forget whether they knowingly did that or not. That was the effect. Now we wanted to sell drugs and we wanted to gang bang, which was silly as fuck. But it's just like when you used to watch the Bruce Lee films and come out kicking each other's ass, or watching them Scarface, and you know, they had that effect on us. But I think the meaningful part of it was when we drove down the street. We drove down the street with an attitude we didn't have before, and empowered like we hadn't had before. That was the positive net result of that whole thing that with Easy E and NWA.
Yeah, I had the same sense of feeling myself because I remember feeling that way, what you just said. I remember seeing Boys in the Hood, and then Menace to Society, and that it wasn't, the world looks at it as it was a bad moment in time in our history,
Yep,
but it was so empowering to see, what we actually took up our arms, like, we're not dealing with this anymore. This is enough of this. We had enough of, dealing with the police and
that's right.
of course you have the drugs and you have the women and stuff, but besides that point, it was black men being able to stand up and say something for a change, actually hear our voices at our age too, which made a difference for me.
Yeah,
Um,
you know what the line? It's funny you said the line that stood out in Gangster Gangster. I think it was Gangster Gangsters. Cube says, "You don't like how I'm living? Well, fuck you. This is a gang, and I'm in it." Right? Like, you don't like how I'm living? Well, fuck you. We needed that.
yeah,
We needed that. To your point, you look at all the other obvious like
of
negative
course.
trappings of whatever, but that line alone like empowered us. Like, you don't like how I'm living? Well, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like Black youth needed. We needed punk rock. You know, like, think about this. Black culture, Black youth had never had a punk rock movement.
We didn't have a
Period.
voice. Yeah.
We didn't.
Yeah.
And I always say this about NWA. NWA put punk rock out of business. That's how punk rock they were. There was no more. That's how hardcore that was. Because even punk rock couldn't do what hip hop can do, which is fuck you, fuck your mother, fuck your hood, you know, like on wax. Like,
Yeah.
just
Wow. Speaking of Tupac, going back to that for a minute, Dear Mama, can you share your inspiration behind the film and what made you want to, bring this out, put this film out?
Well, I initially didn't want to do it when the estate asked me to a meeting. I didn't want to do it because I just got done doing Defiant Ones, which took three and a half years, and it was brutal. Just making a documentary is not as fun and regimented as a feature film, and scripted. There's no script, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's the personal background with Tupac. And it's the same thing I felt on Defiant Ones. There were some Tupac chapters in Defiant Ones, and there were some chapters in there uneasy. And when I did Defiant Ones, I didn't realize I hadn't processed their depths. So that was a heavy thing for me, let alone the personal journey. But when I discovered, I said, wait a minute, I was raised by a single activist mother. My mother was in the forefront of the women's rights movement. And I said, wow, if I could tell the story through their relationship, then I'm in. And when I pitched it to the estate, because I said, let me think about it. I came back a few days later. I said, if we can make this just as much about his mother and we can find Tupac through his mother, then I'm in. Because that's Dear Mama. The whole concept of Dear Mama is a guy, me, going, I see myself in that.
Right.
That's me and my mom,
right.
You know, and that was the inspiration.
Oh, wow. So, wow, that's deep. I mean, I didn't know that it's actually, so pretty much your story, but you're telling it through the lens of Tupac and his.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's deep.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can only see something in whatever you're creating that is you. You know, I don't think any artist looking at anything, how are you gonna see something that ain't you know, or find deeper understandings of your journey through their journey? And that's all that is.
Like, what's the process to put that whole?
Well, it's just first of all, it's an entire family and friends and comrades and Panthers that I had no idea. I didn't even know about Panther history. I've been taught some things. I've read some things. So you have to start to excavate. And there was a manuscript that's now an authorized biography of Tupac written by Stacey Robinson. But then it was just manuscript form. So I had to read this manuscript that the estate allowed me to read and find all these characters and peoples and places and go, all right, we're going to interview this person, that person. We don't need that person. And then you start the process of interviewing people. And other filmmakers, I think, just read and read and read and read.
Right.
I read, but the most important thing for me is sitting down with people and like touching them and like feeling who they are. And I learned through experiential. It wasn't until I sat out with Globe that Tupac's aunt, that like my mind was like Afeni's only sister, where I was like, oh shit, I get what this is now. And so that's a hard process because you do interviews, you start shooting other things, and you cut some things together, and you think you've developed the language. Because me as a filmmaker, I'm trying to find like, what is the language of this piece? How does it move? I can't do what I did in Defiant Ones. I got to do something different that is unique to what this is. So it's a painful process. This one was like a little over 3 years. And it's just ever evolving and changing, and how you're dealing with certain things is challenging you, and you're bringing your life into it. It's bringing its life into your life. And so I don't even know what the process is. You just keep shooting and cutting. And I'm always trying to figure out how to innovate. Like there's this wonderful thing we do in Dear Mama, where there's this, what I call audio weaving, where Afeni and Tupac are finishing each other's sentences.
Wow, yeah.
Or you hear an acapella to my composer's music, so it brings that more out. Or you're hearing the acapella with the composition, and it's weaving in and out of the story to telling. So there's all these complex things that we developed during the making of it that make it a lot more nuanced, a lot more emotion. So that's a difficult thing to try to find.
When I saw the film and I looked at the beginning of it, it was so impactful. Just the introduction, I was like, wow, here, just the way how it went from the beginning scenes and then it went to him on the mic and then Dear Mama. I'm like, wow, that introduction alone itself was very good. You know, I just loved it. It was great.
You know, it's funny you talk about that opening, right? And the opening starts Halloween night, 1993, when he shoots the two off-duty police officers. Now, Victor, I submit this to you. Of all the books I read and all the interviews and all the documentaries on Tupac, I never heard from anyone that after he shot those cops in the ass, he went to the hotel room and played Dear Mama demo. See what I mean? That's not till you start going and sitting down with people in their kitchens and their living rooms. And you're like, wait a minute, what? Who else was there that night? So, because you're like, he might be making this shit up. This don't sound true. Then you go interview the other people that were there that night, and they all say, no. Not only did he play it, but we were all fucking terrified about what just happened. And he was just, as they said, in the trance.
Yeah.
You know, and then you figure out, oh, okay, so I got that. And then you're like, okay, let's kick into the credit sequence. I don't want to do a typical credit sequence. All right, we'll do that. And then you find footage of him in the mic booth. And then you find the acapella where he's mumbling a whole nother verse that was never on the album. That's actually muted on the record. He's even if you some rage in your cage, he's mumbling. I said, let's put that in the movie. So my point is too, is like that scene 2 years before it was in the movie was this scene over there, and it was this scene over there, and it was this scene over there. And as you keep developing it, you start pulling them together and you go, hey, let's put this one up front, you know? Yeah. So to ever, because you don't have a script.
Yeah. I love how you put it together though, because it wasn't just old footage. It was current footage. It was a little bit of animation. It was the words. It was beautifully done and well done. Now, with that being said, what was the message that you were trying to get to the audience? I mean, the overall message that you yourself as director, filmmaker.
You know, I always say there's like that usually the overarching theme. But I say in the movie, sometimes those sub themes are more important than the theme. So it's like it's not. And by the way, when I was finishing it, it probably was one thing, and I fucking forgot what that one thing was. But I think. Look, you see how speechless I am right now because of working on all that. I have a real hard time with like the word message.
Right.
But I do know that I wanted people to be inspired by Afeni and Tupac's concept of art as activism.
Okay.
That's what I was like, oh wow, and what an artist she was. And like and also like that struggle with like morality, like, you know, what is right, what is wrong, how do I care for my community, my people, while also getting lost in this whirlwind, which is real life shit, whether it's on trial facing 360 years, or in Tupac's case, just the whole hip hop milieu and what that brings to, because this guy was meant to be a civil rights leader. You can see that clear as day.
Yeah.
And then you can see what kind of detours that whole thing. But I think that the number one thing I want people to take away is like, remember when people used to stand for something and mean it? Remember when you used to say, I'm doing this for these good reasons, no matter what. And I just think we've lost leadership in our community. We've lost like the morality compass has been gone. And by the way, Afeni's was tested big time with all the stuff that she dealt with in the wake of the getting off that trial and being abandoned and finding herself addicted to drugs. And Tupac clearly was tested. You look at that last 11 months, never made sense to me, that whole death row thing. But I understand now why he lost himself a little bit to that. But ultimately, they both stood for something that was righteous in a time right now where I seemingly don't even see that anymore. And you got to give Tupac credit because where are all the artists that really stand for something meaningful for the people? You know what? You know, I don't see
one yet.
anyone really standing up
No.
anymore. Everyone's scared.
Everyone's bought and paid for, I would say.
That's right.
And not to put any shame on anybody's career or where they are, because everybody, I believe that everyone has their goals and purposes that they go for. And sometimes we as a community try to put that on them, like, oh, they should be this, they should be that. But they could come in and say, hey, I'm just in here for the money. I'm in here for the fame. You know, so sometimes I try to remind myself that, hey, I'm not going to put this on, you know, this person or that person, because they probably have different goals than I have, different standards, you know.
Look what's happening right now in our culture right now. Is because there's no North Star.
There isn't one.
There's no North Star. And by the way, just people out there going north is north, south is south, east is, you know, like just the compass, just the normal moral compass that doesn't require religion, that doesn't require being a part of an organization, just straight up solid human beings.
What do you do to after this, you know, you say you worked on it for about 3 years, the film and whatever. What do you do to decompress or to, like, you know, yeah, I guess from all the tension built up of you know, not just creating it, but, you know, promoting it, talking about it constantly. It's because it's in you now, you know. You're not doing it on the you know, surface level. This is deep. So what do you do to decompress from all of this, you know, as you do films? What's your process like?
That's a great question. You know, it's like the word exorcism has the word exercise in it. You know, I hike, I do yoga, I do sauna, I do cold plunge.
Okay.
I try to eat clean, but I stay in nature. And you said something earlier, Victor, that the one thing that's changed about my life, especially when I'm decompressing, is while it's daytime, I live outside. I'm not inside. I used to be like that. Like when I'm in my home in Claremont, California, which is set in a foothill, I'm doing this. You would see nature behind me. I stay outside during daylight hours. I am not inside with the TV on. I am not inside reading. Everything's going to happen outside in the sun, around water, around photosynthesis. And I love going hiking. You should see, like, friends tease me because I'm always picking like herbs and shrubs and rosemary and sage and whatever, spearmint, whatever is there. I'm not even aware. I'm just picking it. I'm smelling it. I'm picking it. I'm smelling it. I don't bring my headphones. I don't bring an iPhone. I don't bring any electronics. And that's like God's great mixing board, you know, like just getting you. It takes a couple months to decompress, but like, and travel too, like just going up, even if it's locally, going up to Big Sur.
Yeah, I love Big Sur.
Getting some other type of nature.
How do you pick your films, your projects? I would say, you have more. You seem like you have more creative control over what you do with your life, and that's beautiful. That I think everyone needs to have that. What drives you to a project? What do you think?
I think the number one thing is like, is this me?
Right.
You know, like, and by the way, there's like things that are far more brilliant, that are far more better, bigger hits, will win awards and whatever, that just ain't me. And, you know, and you go, is this something that's in me that I can feel, that I can, because ultimately I do have, although I love collaborating, I do have control. And if I don't feel that, if I feel that the voice is going to be compromised in any way, I'm just not going to do it. And I'll go broke, which I have done before one time. You know, where you just like, you know, I'm talking about one time where I just willingly went broke because I'm like, well, fuck this shit. I'm not doing this because it's all spiritual. Anything creative is spiritual, and when you're dealing with spiritual, there are no words. There are some concepts. So you have to always tell people, you can feel. You talk about destiny. If you really go inside yourself, you can feel something pulling you towards your destiny, and that's usually what I'm paying attention to. Unconsciously, most of the time, you can just let go, and you can feel you're being pulled towards something. Even when you're like, I don't want to do this. I didn't want to do Dear Mama. I literally did not want to do it. And it just kept calling me and calling me and calling. I go, all right, well, fuck it. There's a reason. And by the way, more outside of the artistic endeavor, I think it was cathartic for me. You know, I think I learned and gained a lot of knowledge and understanding of things that I had no idea about, interpersonal, personal, global, you know, all kinds of shit. People think of just the me and Tupac thing, like, this. But again, here's a case of something I did not want to do, but it was called to do.
I think you did it very well. And I think in a time and place where we don't, like you said, we don't have a North Star in the community, we don't have that voice, even in the music community or hip hop or whatever you want to call it. I think that by you doing this film, you did it justice, because we don't. I mean, what do we have? We have no shade to 50 Cent, but he's doing, his power stuff and all this other stuff. And it's cool, but you actually lived in the time with the person that you actually did the film about.
I always ask, what does this mean?
Yeah.
What does this mean? Like, is it meaningful? Is it thoughtful? Is it thought provoking? But also, is it punk rock? And that's a hard alchemy where, like, it's got to be bold, beautiful, profane, and profound. All the things, right? But ultimately, does it have heart? Is it food for the soul? And usually, when it's food for the soul, it's fucking corny as shit. And we've seen all that, and some of us, especially in the Black culture, have had to do like message movies or like the almost like after school special type shit, just to be able to work sometimes in the 90s or the 80s or whatever it is. And then there's the others, some you mentioned, where it's like maybe too much of that, gangster lifestyle, but there's like void of deeper meaning.
Right.
And they also haven't figured out the alchemy of like, it's beautiful because there's so many opportunities now for Black filmmakers that we're seeing so many diverse stories, more than we've ever seen before in life. But to achieve at that highest level of cinema and sight and sound and composition is rare.
What the process you go through in picking your next project, your upcoming film, or projects that you have in store with your new team, and with O'Neill and Keisha being involved, and how's that whole process going for you?
Well, that's all. Like my thing now is trying to have a stable, consistent, qualified team. I've been fortunate to have certain people that were in place that were like, oh, this person's talented or that person's talented, but never like now where I'm just trying to put in front, behind, around the camera, just people that bring skills and experience that got my back just as much as I got their back. Because a lot of my career, I feel like I was out here by myself, and sometimes with me and my brother out here by ourselves, and that's no way to be.
Is your brother still filmmaking, or is he?
Yeah. He's still working quite a bit.
What do you have coming up in the future as far as like projects? Are you doing more like theatrical films or documentaries? I'm
always gonna be involved in documentaries but I'm excited to jump back into the feature world. I got a biopic at Universal on Snoop Dogg's life. That's a scripted feature film. I also got Marvin Gaye. I've been kicking around the last few years. So one of those is going to go next, and I'm going to go jump and just get back into the feature world. I got some television projects. I got the Book of Eli prequel series with John Boyega starring as a young Denzel, 30 years leading up to the movie. I have another television series I'm working on. So it's just a bunch of docs, television, and features.
You film it first and then shop it to find the right home for it.
Now this one we got the whole team together. We got the pilot, got the series Bible the whole first year, and so that series is being shopped to all the top streamers and networks right now.
Oh, that's great. How do you when it comes to where we are right now in the cinema and film world, how do you feel about it? Like Color Purple came out. I just saw Snoop Dogg's. He did this movie on Amazon or whatever.
Underdogs.
Yeah, that was interesting. And how do you feel about like the way or the place where we are right now in the as a community, it's culture,
Like I said before, when you look at television and the streaming giants, you look at features, there's never been a time where there's now more diverse Black voices doing all of the above: film, television, docs. I mean, it's not as great as it was 4 years ago, but it's still better than it ever has been as far as the richness and diverse voices out there, doing, moving and shaking. So I don't, I mean, it's one thing to judge it. It's back to like, is that one for me? No, but I'm glad she's doing that. I'm glad he's doing that. And I'm glad that there's a diversity of voices out there within the Black filmmaking community that, people understand it's just not one monolith. It is all kinds of stuff. Even the weirdo cinema's coming out now with the Book of Clarence and stuff like that. And some of the stuff that, when I say weirdo, like eclectic. Who was the other guy that did the other thing that my man was in, the same star of Book of Clarence? Who's that other? Boots Riley out there doing his strange, unique voice. I mean, we didn't have this before. You've arrived when niggas can be weird.
Right, when you can be comfortable doing stuff different. Yeah.
That's when like, oh, we're at a point where there's the weird shit now. All the other years were just striving just to do seemingly normal shit, and we've gotten to a mass level when we can get our freak on. Would you ever consider doing any more music videos? Sure, when it's the right one. But most music is, when I think back to like the one that me and my brother are the most proudest of, it was Brenda's Got a Baby. Right. And you go, why are we most proud of it outside of what we feel we did? It wasn't even about what we did. That's a hell of a story. Right. Like, there's great storytelling. Tupac laid one verse down, and it was a real story. When you look at hip hop, you look at pop, rock, whatever, there's not really much storytelling anymore. So you got to be compelled by that, I think. I do have to be compelled by that. Well, I am not going to take up any more of your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. Look forward to your other projects, and I'm going to let O'Neal know that, it was great. And Please do, because I don't want him in my ass.
Thanks for joining us today on A Conversation with Tobias by Lenox and Parker. See you next week.